conservative press too much of a pass around here when it comes to how they report on black mob violence, black on white crime, and black criminality wildly out of proportion. I mean, right now we're kind of used to the fact that the knee-jerk reaction from the mainstream media is to ignore, deny, condone, encourage, even lie about the tsunami of violence that so many people experience in this country every day. My own favorite quote came from the Philadelphia Inquirer. A local magazine had kind of dipped its toe into the water of talking about black criminality and how white people in Philadelphia kind of have their head on a swivel because of all this black on white hostility. So they published an article called "Being White in Philadelphia." Black people in Philadelphia went crazy. Had a huge meeting with the mayor there. The mayor said the article was despicable. It's going to set us back, all this progress we've made in this city that I think now is like 73% black. And but my favorite quote came from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and they kind of tried to capture what the article was about. It said, "The article was seen as dwelling on negative experiences that whites had with blacks that often fit into racial stereotypes." I love that. But that's kind of a perfect summary of how most newspapers and TV shows that we talk about on this channel, how they cover this stuff, or how they don't cover it. But for some reason, we always have a higher expectation for the conservative press, whether it's Breitbart or National Review or Daily Caller, or you name it. I mean, Drudge does a great job on this. But the other ones, everyone. I think they'll report. Like yesterday, there was a video that we showed of a white woman going into a black party and asking the fellas to turn their music down. Next thing you know, all these people on the video, and it's on my channel. On the video, all these black people are going, "Throw her in, throw her in." This is like an old white woman with two little dogs on a leash, and they're hurling all this abuse at her. Next thing you know, somebody picks her up and is trying to throw her into the pool, but he slips and he falls down with her. Then he gets up, throws her into the pool, and too much merriment and laughter. I mean, this was pure and simple an episode of black mob violence on a defenseless old white woman. Period. And a lot of the conservative websites ran the video, but nobody ever is connecting the dots on these websites. No one is ever saying, "Listen, when a white person goes up to a bunch of black people and says turn your music down, or can you get off my lawn, or can you stop jumping on my car?" It turns out really, really poorly. So they're really afraid to connect the dots, and that's really essentially what the most important thing we do around here is to say, no, this isn't isolated. I mean, we know what the numbers are. The numbers are wildly out of proportion, and if the liberals had their way, we would sit here all day long and do nothing but reel off numbers, because guess what? Nobody would listen to us. But when you tell stories about this, they take the opposite tact, is that, oh, you're just cherry picking. And I saw one good example over the weekend of how so-called conservatives, they kind of get away with dismissing this black violence so wildly out of proportion. And it came from Kat Timpf. She's the Fox News megastar on the new show. I think it's called The Fox News Specialist. She's a regular on the Greg Gutfeld show as well. Anyway, so I did a video an article for American Thinker documenting how Kat kind of tossed this thing off very casually, saying that she's all down with criminal justice reform. She's all down with the fact that black people are brutalized by the police all the time in the black community, and it's a very casual, offhand way, and that people, that's how the tone they use when they believe that whatever they're saying is so transparently obvious that there's no room for disagreement. Well, and so I mean, so what I wrote in the article I wrote for American Thinker, I documented last month at least 40 episodes of large-scale black mob violence in 1 month only. And I didn't even look that hard. I mean, the one you probably heard of if you didn't read the article was the one on the BART train in Oakland where 60 black people went rampaging through the train, beating people up, robbing them, and ran away. 60 black people. I think of one where 10 teachers went to the hospital in Philadelphia and 3 cops after a large-scale episode of black mob violence in a Philadelphia school. I think of five cops who were hurt in a town called Taylor, Michigan, after a huge episode of black mob violence at a carnival. I think of 3 cops that went to the hospital in Davis, California, after an event at UC Davis. This is like the most hippified town in America, people. UC Davis, California. 3 cops went to the hospital, attacked, assaulted, beaten for trying to break up an episode of large-scale black mob violence at UC Davis. We documented all this, and we kind of challenged Kat to take a look at it past this casually dismissing it on her national news program. So she came back and said, well, Colin ridiculing me for acknowledging the indisputable impact of our criminal justice system on people of color is disgusting. Have a good weekend. See, you notice how she did the classic liberal flip there? That black people who commit crimes are not predators. They are victims of something called a criminal justice system. So if a black person boinks you on the head or slits 2 people's throat in Boston, as we did the story yesterday, 2 doctors, that person is somehow a victim of some kind of criminal justice system which features white racism and police brutality. A lot of conservatives are kind of down with that. Then a lot of people from this channel, a lot of people from my Twitter account, they were throwing this, retweeting that article and throwing it over to Kat, going, Kat, what's up? Why is Colin saying this about you? And she came back with her numbers. Glad you asked. Black Americans, and this is what Kat said, Black Americans represent 12% of the total population of drug users, but 60% of those in state prison for drug offenses. And so to say that is to say that white people do it too, but only black people get arrested for it. Every study ever done on different drug uses, rates of drug use between black people and white people, show an enormous difference between black drug use and white drug use if the reporting is based on tests and not what the drug user says. And the way everybody comes back, people like Kat come back at that and goes, yeah, well, I guess you've never been on a college campus and seen all these white kids smoking dope. Well, the fact is, black people use drugs at an enormously higher level than white people. We documented 2 things. We documented that in Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. And we documented how in these medical studies, the doctors went in and tested the enormous difference between black people and white people on how they report their drug use. Johns Hopkins down in Baltimore, they found that, black people were 6 times more likely to lie about their drug use than white people. But, people that call themselves libertarian, they just toss these things away. See, Rand Paul does this too. She does the cat Timpf thing, which is, here's another quote from Kat when she retweeted about my article. She said, anecdotal evidence does not refute what's clear statistically. The criminal justice system needs reform. Well, I don't even know what the hell that means, but conservatives get away with saying that because that gives them a pass on not really talking about this level of black criminality that they are frightened to death of talking. And all the time, Kat Timpf is in denial, deceit, and delusion about it. In the last 48 hours, we've had 4 or 5 more episodes of black mob violence, putting lots of people in the hospital, causing violence and mayhem. Let's just take a look at them real quick.
After the assault of a police officer in Gloucester County. This is cell phone video of an incident that happened Saturday night in Paulsboro. The chief of police says his officers were surrounded and assaulted when they tried to arrest some people allegedly involved in a large fight. Police are taking a look at the video captured by the officers' body cameras. The department is now increasing the number of officers on patrol in response to these assaults.
Updating you on breaking news from our 10 o'clock newscast last night. We now know 5 people have been arrested after a fight in Grandview. It happened at the Truman Heritage Festival at the amphitheater. Police say a big group of minors got into a fight. An adult woman then used pepper spray on the crowd, including officers who were trying to stop the fight. Someone fired a single gunshot in the area, making things worse, sparking chaos. Parents say this was not started by kids in their city.
Every kid that I saw that was involved were kids I've never seen before. I know there were Grandview kids involved. They're here, but the groups that I saw had nothing to do with our kids. They were trying to make sure their own groups were staying together, and that's the Grandview kids I saw.
Police officers from KC-Mo, Belton, Lee Summit, Missouri Highway Patrol, and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office had to show up and help. 2 juveniles and 3 adults were arrested for things like fighting and assaulting an officer. Good news here. Aside from the pepper spray exposure, no one was seriously hurt.
So that last thing we just saw is the Truman Heritage Festival. And city leaders in this city that's 40% black, which means it's a chocolate city. Here's what they said about this large-scale episode of black mob violence at their Truman Heritage Festival. What happened last night is not reflective of our growing and progressive community. That's about all you need to know about that. Truman Heritage Festival, well, except for the people who were there went to the Truman Heritage Festival Facebook page, and they really gave dozens and dozens of accounts of what it was like to be there. Gang violence, shots fired, police from 4 different departments, people running through the neighborhoods, trying to escape the cops, trying to escape the gunfire. Lots and lots of people calling BS on that. Why don't we move up to Syracuse Middle School, Danforth Middle School in Danforth in Syracuse, New York. It said 13 students were involved. I don't know how they come up with these numbers, like 13. But three staff, the vice principal and 2 other staff members were injured trying to break up the fight. 2 of them required hospitalization. This is large-scale episodes of black mob violence. Ditto up in Cheektowaga. I think that's up near Buffalo or Rochester. Anyway, a large-scale episode of black mob violence at the Walden Galleria. This is not the first time we've done stories on the Walden Galleria. Last time we did it, we've done a couple up there at the violence during the Christmas season. And you know, this is something, and the conservative reporters, people like Kat Timpf, a conservative commentator, they just want to brush this aside, saying, well, there's more black people in prison than white people, so that's obviously this is obviously a case of white racism and police brutality. And you know what? We let them get away with it too much. Why don't we finish up with something that happened at a Denny's down in, I think it's North Carolina. We just don't see what you're about to see from white people. And this is enormously a black thing.
Video of a brawl at a local restaurant is getting worldwide attention. Now it has nearly 3 million views on Facebook. News 10 ABC's Lauren Linder is live in Colony. Those details tonight. Good evening, Lauren.
Good evening, Noel. Well, Colony police tell me that the fight happened inside this Denny's off of Wolf Road here. The video of the fight is now gaining more views every second. We want to warn you that the content in this story is graphic. People putting hands on each other, throwing punches, tables start to move, and plates fall and break into pieces. This was the scene inside Denny's around 4:20 Saturday morning. At a time, you see someone lying on the floor. The most dramatic part, a woman getting punched by 2 people as she tries to shield herself from the blows. The video posted on Facebook by a comedian named Knick Knack Paddywhack. In one day, it has more than 2 million views and 40,000 shares. It's no surprise why.
Oh, wow.
It grabs your attention.
You got somebody down on the ground being smacked, beat up, you know. It's almost like WWF live in Denny's.
You're not the one who's in Denny's getting beat up or, watching this happen and then not knowing what to do.
But John Dawley says there's a problem with this. A guy decided to film this fight instead of trying to help.
It's really bad that the guy filming didn't decide to step in and do anything.
The video closes with the comedian sipping his drink and his friend dancing in the restaurant.
Just did it for pretty much social media.
Well, Colony police say no ambulances were called to respond. Also, no arrests were made and no tickets were issued. Police would not say why.
I'm just trying to process why there's been no consequences.
As people question this, the video continues to circulate the web, finding viewers around the world.
I was listening to a podcast this morning on NPR called This American Life. It was kind of focused on Steve Bannon and his kind of merry band of conservative reporters and journalists and activists with Breitbart and lots of other websites, Laura Ingraham, Ann Coulter. It talked about how they focused on that congressional race where they kicked Eric Cantor out of Congress, mostly because of his vote on immigration. But one thing I kind of took away from that story was how focused the reporters were on uncovering the reporting about immigration, but they really were focused on reporting about immigration to the extent that it could make a difference in the upcoming election against Cantor. It's not really what we do that much around here. We just talk about this black mob violence wildly out of proportion. And I'm not really focusing on whether it's going to kick people out of office or not, but I do know that a lot of conservatives, they look at the 13% black population, which votes 95% Democrat. That, in a very real sense, they're voting, for 95% Democrat. That kind of inflates their vote up to 2020 it's really worth like a quarter of the population. And so I think the conservatives, journalists, they're hyper aware that if they start targeting this black violence that is ignored, denied, condoned, excused, encouraged, and even lied about among reporters and black public officials and other officials around the country, they're afraid this is going to do something to affect the outcome for conservative candidates or Republican candidates. And to me, I don't really give a damn about that. To me, it's just like, hey, there's something going on here. There's something really strange with the way this business is being reported. There's something really strange with the way a lot of people are getting hurt. And a lot of people like Kat Timpf are just ignoring it, denying it. They're in denial, deceit, and delusion about it. And it's all because they just don't want to make the black kids angry.